Okay, class, we are at weekly update 11. Really nice job last week finishing up chapter 1. And the challenge problems were interesting to see too. So we'll get all to that. First thing, there's a few folks sick this time, a couple COVID ones. And so everyone just continue to be careful, take care of yourself, rest up, and please continue to email me and let me know your situation if you need an extension. And Chloe and I are happy to accommodate, especially this semester, but in general we are. And so then last week, I feel like sometimes I get it's so weird talking into space, and then hoping people watch these. But I find usually I'm really good at remembering who said what when, and I have an excellent memory for that. Students are always kind of shocked and said 2 weeks ago Amber said this, but it's all because my memory seems is so linked to the physical aspect of the room. Was it sunny outside, where Amber was sitting, all these sorts of things. And so I feel like just talking into this void makes me kind of scattered. So I wanted to apologize that last week I started off on a couple tangents and didn't finish them. One of the tangents was, I just jump around in these videos. One of them was, you need to recognize the biases of whoever's giving you information. You should do this for all the folks. Like if you're reading a book, if you have a instructor, you have a teacher in your yoga class or jujitsu, whatever it is you're learning. Like think about what are their, they don't intentionally have these, but they'll let them out. And I forgot to tell you about some of mine. I think some of them are apparent from these journals, right? That for me, it's math is concepts plus calculations. We need to be doing both of those. Teamwork is a big deal. We'll talk a little bit more about that from your survey comments. But also in this class, I just really try to, given COVID in this asynchronous format, and then they're asking me to do more of these because I guess y'all really are enjoying this format. I just tried to work within the constraints that were given in this particular learning environment. And so I know we have some educators in the class, and so that was something that was really important to me. Rather than forcing, I think some people are frustrated with this because they're trying to force what they would do in a live in-person class into this environment. I was like, okay, given these constraints, what are some things that we can do? Some things are working well, but I see some things that I love feedback on to improve for next semester. Let's see, I think I mentioned this, but just to let y'all know, there's so many analytics that I get from YouTube, from Oaks, and I'll use that to adjust your grades up or down. So I think that there's some sense of fairness in the group and the teamwork when I see that. I mean, it's also very clear from the submissions and following the things on the Google Doc and who's doing what for particular assignments. It's clear. If you're worried you're overdoing, you're the one pulling all the weight, don't worry, you're gonna get bumped up. If you're one that's just riding on the coattails of someone else, that also comes in to bump you down a bit. And I've mentioned this a few times. I think some people are getting concerned. I keep saying there's a couple people in the class that I'm worried about. And if you're the people diligently watching, you're doing everything right. Unfortunately, I realized, it occurred to me that I'm trying to motivate some people that, again, I'm just concerned. I don't want people to fail. I'd love to give all A's and B's this semester. There's a few people I'm concerned about. I realized that they're probably not watching these videos. So again, if you're concerned about someone else in your group or one of your friends, your teammates in class, maybe text them to give them a call next time you see them on campus, like, hey, watch those videos. You might get some pointers and some notes out of those. Okay, then next thing we had this week was I guess it was last week, was the survey. So it was sort of a 2/3 way through the semester survey. So lots of you did that. Thank you for the feedback. That was really helpful. And so one of the questions on there was about how do you feel about the final? You're starting to get nervous, and we are a bit of a ways out. And like any final, people tend to be just the cumulative, comprehensive nature of a final. They get a little nervous. And so a few details. So I think what I've seen, and the reason that I try to teach in this constructive, deconstructive style, is that you will remember things better than you think you will, because you've sort of emblazoned it in your memory by doing a personalized or physical activity. And so all of this is built to get us ready for the final. I think things are going to go great. They did last semester, but just to give you a few more details about the final, you'll be allowed to have it. So there will be a window, like a 2 or 3 day window, during which you can take your final. Once you decide to start, you have 2 hours. It is timed, a requirement of the math department. Another requirement of the math department is you have to submit your work. So first part of the exam will be like your OAKS quizzes. You'll go in there and there'll be concept questions, a bunch of concept questions, so that you should be able to fly through, just like your quizzes, just like the chapter review at the end of every chapter in the journal. And then the second half is calculation questions. They'll probably be, given the time, maybe 15 or so problems, calculation problems, similar again to what you see in the quizzes, similar to what you see in the chapter reviews, similar to what you see in your calculation practice, but also similar to that midterm that was optional. It's a good time to start printing that out. And then we also have a final review module at the very end that just has the midterm with answers and a final calculation questions with answers worked out. So print those and take a look. Those are the ones that you have to show your work for, you have to submit. I cannot grade it unless there is work. You can't just put the answer 7 because you could have used a tech tool. So we have to see all the work clearly shown. It's okay to use a tech tool to check your work. I'm not putting any browser lockdowns, but you have to show your steps. And then that is also going to be, there's lots of eyes on this during COVID semesters. I'm sure you've heard that, but some people just in STEM in particular are just terrified about cheating. And so they're taking all sorts of measures. And one of those is that I'll be grading it, but it also goes to an assessment committee as well. So don't be tempted to cheat during these semesters. Not a good idea. It could have some bad ramifications. Not that any of you would do that, and you all got it. You're going to ace it. So what else can I say about the final? Yeah, so you can write. I suggest 2 pages of notes so everything is right there. Any formulas that you might need, the equations, any terms, just put them on a 2-sided piece of paper, and that'll help you with the 2-hour part. Okay, then after the exam, your 2 hours is up. So you decided you wanted to start at 3:30. It's 5:30. You cannot complete any more questions on OAKS through the OAKS part, and you have 15 minutes to then scan and upload as one PDF, as we've been doing all semester, your work for those problems. Okay, again, we'll talk more as we get closer, but those are the details. I think that helps with some of the stress, just knowing what format it's going to be in. So it's similar to the format that you've had for your quizzes, but we have this time factor. Okay. A couple of comments on the survey. There's some really great groups that are doing a fantastic job, and that they have really bonded. I think they're going to stay in touch after beyond Calc 3, which is awesome. I've had students that have emailed me years later sending a wedding picture, like, hey, we met in your Calculus 105 class, 6 years ago, and we were in a group together, and now we're married. Or send a picture, 3 students that are doing study abroad in Spain that, again, met in Calc and just had a good time, decided to take some other classes together. So I hope that's the case, but I know there's a few groups that are having some challenges with their teams. And one of the things you're definitely getting is the team skills of working in the real world and how to communicate with people if you're frustrated, and what's working and what isn't working. And I'd love some more ideas too for future semesters, because I hate that. I know that's a source of extra stress that you don't need if you do have a problem team member. What I've done in previous semesters, and can't do it in this class because it's asynchronous, but in a 105 class, I've given them the first exam. They don't do so great, and then put them in groups and give them a retake on that first exam, where 50% of their grade is how they do on the retake individually, and 50% is their group's average. And I let that sink in for a little bit. Like, some people like, wait, oh wait, then they sort of, okay, so if you were the one that was like, well, I'm in this group and who cares? I got a D, I don't care. Well, now you gotta have some motivation because you could pull down your other group members if you're not decide you're not gonna work. Everyone's capable of doing this. It's usually just a matter of budgeting time or being disciplined. But if you're the A student, you're like, I got an A, but wait a minute, now I gotta help some people. They've got to learn this. And so they get together, get around a whiteboard, make study sessions. Um, and they start just getting good study habits. And then that's how some of that bonding goes on because there's just a lot at stake now. I found that groups don't act like groups unless you force them. Like again, there's some accountability. And then that's the only one, the first one. And for there on, you can do as you wish, but they continue to work because they realize just how efficient and helpful it is. And those A students often sometimes are like, I just love this. Now I'm going to work in the math lab, or I think I might be a tutor. And they find that they're much more efficient too. They have to study less by helping people. They can kind of, that's their studying. But usually what I do actually in that retake is I don't let anybody's grade get pulled down. I just make them think it is going to, but I don't actually do that because it doesn't seem fair. So if you were the A student and everybody else in your group, you were able to help bring them up, I assume that was as a result of everybody working as a team, and I'm not going to let you come down at all. So if you got a 95, you get to keep that 95, even though it might have been a 90 if I've done the averaging. Okay, so again, we can't do that in this class, so I'd like some ideas if there's other ways to sort of, again, make that cohesive group bonding. But most of y'all doing great, so that's wonderful. Also, I should say that you're allowed to work with any, I think I've said this before, but you can work with anyone in this class at any time. Like it's great if you have some good colleagues in an astrophysics major. Well, go ahead and, even though they're not technically in your group, for this one, go ahead and work together. You could also work with them to submit, say, challenge upgrades that your group didn't want to do anymore, but you decided, I'm going to go through number 4 and 5. I'm going to grab this other person from this other group. Let's work on them. Study together. So I want you to use your groups, but again, sometimes it's more convenient or you already have a relationship. Use anybody in the class. Use your resources. Okay, a couple errors this week. Thank you to Clarissa, Liam, and Kelly noting some things. Page 60, I've taken care of that, Clarissa, and then there was just like an S and T confusion. And I just want to say when you have a parameterized surface, so R of ST, or sometimes you'll see R of UV later, 2 parameters, S and T, it doesn't matter, like you could say R of TS, right? So it doesn't matter as long as you, how that's parameter, you have 2 parameters, it doesn't matter the order that they come in or what you decide to call them. So I think that was one bit of confusion. I have some ideas for fixing that for future. Okay, activities. Really need to see the scavenger hunters, need to see, like Ali did a great job just going around campus and just spotting things all over the place. Liam, Eleanor, Keegan, Dana Mae, Grant all did that one. In the samples and examples for the activities, I put Clarissa, Dana Mae, Aaron, and Grant, so check those out. Also in the samples and examples of the calculations, Griffin, Keegan, Dana Mae, Clarissa, Aaron, and Grant. So find those in the module 5, week 2 samples and examples. And probably the winner for this week overall was Dana Mae. She got it in both the activities and the calculations. And really, she had struggled with the lines last time, and then the second time things really clicked for her. And you could see that in the homework. So that persistence, and then the second half of the chapter sort of locking things in place, which was neat. I also really liked Erin's calculations. They're just so nicely spaced and separated. So easy to follow her work on those. Check hers out if you had trouble with the second half of chapter 1. Okay, and then the challenge, the last little bit here. Yes, so every group, this is interesting, every group did challenge number 1, which was the 2 planes, if they would collide. Clarissa and Grant did levels 1 through 3, was neat to see. I like Keegan and Aaron's, it was just very clear, because again, this is a quarter law sort of case, nice visuals, angles, and the zooms, and just their language is very like, I'm just reminding me of reading a brief for legal court case. So I've been actually hired as a consultant several times in my career. Worked on one case, lasted a couple of years. It was actually a catamaran sailing company that had hired a search engine optimization firm to help them get sales and help with the website. And since I do optimization and I'd written a book about search engines, they thought search engine optimization was the same thing, but they're really not. Wouldn't have considered myself an expert, but when they called me to ask about it, I knew a few little tips already. Like, hey, you can look at the source code of a web page. There's nothing proprietary about that, even though that's what the SEO firm was claiming. And so I was hired to help them for a couple of years and had to write tech reports and the briefings that would go to the case. And it's interesting that how much those figures and the language, and that's why they like hiring professors as consultants, because they're usually good at explaining and teaching things. Another one I worked on was actually lasted 5, or maybe it was 7 years, so it was all done. Was a inventor in North Carolina had come up with an idea before Google and PageRank, and he had patented it. And so it turned out that Google had actually infringed in their link analysis for how they decided to come up with PageRank and sort those pages in Google. And this one I had written a book about, and the inventor read the book and was like, wait a minute, that's what I did. That's what I patented. And so he got together. So they took a lot of money to sue a company that big. So they had some venture capitalists and some law firms to support him. And it was a very long, extended, protracted case. But it was neat because I got to look inside all of the major search engines, like looking under the hood of Google and Yahoo and Ask. All the ones at that time. It was from like 2006 to like 2012, I guess I was working on that case. And they finally did settle right before we were about to depose Larry Page for his PageRank. And so this inventor finally they were just saying, if you've infringed, then you should have to pay for that use of that software that he invented. So anyway, the language, it was neat in group 2. I just thought that the language was so nice. It was easy to understand what was going on. Group 4, this is Team PBS, Patrick, Liam, and Cameron. I just love their steps. But the other thing I liked about this is they had several different methods. I think each of them thought about the problem, came together, and had different approaches for tackling it. And they got to the same answer at the end. Another thing they did was kind of cool is they looked up, I think I had just made up a number out of the air, like the safe clearance is 1,000 feet. It turns out the safe clearance by, like, they looked up FAA regulations, I think it was 500 feet. So maybe I'll change that in future ones. They did levels 1 through 3. They also checked out some YouTube videos that were helpful for them to find the shortest distance between 2 lines, or I think they looked at one in a point and plane too. And most groups came up with this number around 800-ish, and they were very precise with theirs. I think it was like 878 or 873 or something, which also the next group, group 5, Griffin, Thomas, Lothair, Kelly also came to that number. Theirs was neat to see their report because it had this nice Q&A style that, again, kind of fit the court. You could imagine like this actually happening live in a courtroom. Here's the question, here's the answer. Here's the question, here's the answer. Also did this one was Mac, Eleanor, Christie. And then lastly, Savannah and Grace, the other 2-person team. Really well written. I liked what they did there. Is they had really nice use of italics and like boldface font to emphasize certain parts of their argument. Okay, but nice job on that one. And let's see. So now you're getting started in chapter 2, and there's a lot of content here. Oh, this also reminds me. Griffin had some discussion, and I think I finally see his point now that these 2 lines, like I said something about time, and I should have said at what points are they closest. But now in chapter 2, you'll have a way to figure out, given these 2 lines, the velocities or the speeds. So we're now going to take nonlinear things, and so space curves that are a little more interesting, and so it might be a curvy thing, but we stop at a point. We'll now have a tangent vector off of that, and we'll be able to get derivatives, velocities, accelerations. So some of that you might be able to come back and think, how might I have extended things in other levels of that challenge problem? But this chapter, there's quite a bit going on, so kind of dense. So plan ahead this week. There's derivatives, curvatures, tangent vectors, normal vectors, a lot of neat topics, and it's all extensions, things you already knew from Calc 1 and this last book, Calc 3, but applied to these space curves. All right, well, have fun. Great job. And we'll see you next week.